do not underplay what you need from people in terms of time. Your mission is worth it, and we owe it to people to be clear about what we need from them in terms of time. Early on, I found myself saying, well, it's only once a month meetings.
It's not that much.
No.
Don't worry.
And there were moments where I regretted that, or that didn't work.
So
that is a question I often get asked that I appreciate, and I want the chance to answer honestly.
We're so excited. We're going to talk to one of the premier executive directors of a major international nonprofit, Jody Schroer. She's a dear friend of mine, so I'm really glad she's going to play with us today. And she's going to come out of the Y, and we're going to talk about board leadership. I've had the opportunity to serve with her, and so know what it's like to be under her leadership. And so we thought this would be a really great time for us to particularly talk with somebody who works for an international organization with a lot of structures and a lot of practice in being in board management. And are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
We'll just walk and talk.
How does that sound?
Yeah.
I love it.
So when we're talking about boards, and recruitment is one of those things which seems to be a perennial pain point for folks, no matter how large, how long an organization has been in existence. So talk to me about like that secret sauce. What are you looking for in potential board members to serve on the Y board?
Well, I think for us, first and foremost, it's a belief in our mission and in a connection to what we do. So whether that's through being a member or being a volunteer coach or engaged in one of our outreach programs, we always look for someone who's involved with us.
So someone who's
on
connected,
some level.
right?
And especially that deep root belief that we have the opportunity to change people's lives through the work that we do, and someone who wants to go deeper with us. So in our case, a lot of times people think we're just a swim and gym. We know we're so much more than that. And so finding people who are connected and want to go deeper with us is the first answer I'd give you.
I want to go back to secret sauce. So let's say it's an organization that helps puppies, and they don't have a puppy, but they have all the other stuff, traditionally you might want, right? Good network, they're smart, they've got great connects, they have content knowledge and some operational aspect, but what else? You've talked about the secret sauce being an alliance, a compassion, a commitment to the mission. Mm-hmm. How would you advise another executive director in finding that secret sauce with people who don't necessarily have membership?
Yeah. I think I've helped with some other nonprofits in a consulting space, and one that was similar to what you're describing. Mm-hmm. And they did amazing work, but they didn't have as much opportunity for that to be exposed to the broader public. And I think inviting them in to come and be a part of what you are doing. And so in this case, they were a food bank. And so there was opportunities to volunteer, to work one-on-one with a client and help them do their food shopping.
Okay.
And when it was time for board recruitment, we did a tour of the facility and had stops along the way where every program staff got to highlight their role in the organization. And so helping people make a connect if they don't already have it before you recruit them.
Well, and so that also helps because, this find your fit is so important. Mm-hmm. And I use the example of if someone's recruiting you for a people organization and you really are more led to help puppies, that's totally okay. Please say no, right? So if somebody comes to you and it's not the right fit, it's okay to say no and introduce them to somebody in your friend circle who would be a perfect fit. I like what you're saying. So what you're saying is with the Y, it's already, it can always improve and get stronger, and that's what the board, at least it did for me, makes that board membership so priceless. But for folks who may need to be acquainted with what you're doing, that's a great way to get, and also to see if it is a fit, but also to see if they have that commitment more than just kind of a cursory, yeah, I really believe People
Yeah.
shouldn't be hungry, and kids should have food before they go to school. Yeah.
Sure. They
Yeah,
might
yeah,
not
yeah.
love puppies now, but once you really show them the impact of what you're doing, it might create a spark, right?
Ah, I see
So-
what you're saying. Yeah. So maybe it's to show them and then ask versus is it people or puppies? Because if you have no kind of affection for people, let's just get you to a puppy place. I get what you're
that
saying.
made me think of an experience I had early on
Okay.
when I worked with you at Maryland Farms.
Oh, geez.
So we had, I came into a board of almost 30 people, which was a lot.
It was a lot.
So in our case, our boards are advisory boards, not fiduciary boards.
Right.
Right. And so we had a CFO of a large company who had been recruited to our board, who, when I met with him at first, he said, I really thought when I came on that my financial acumen was going to be needed more than it turns out it's needed. And he very gracefully said, I'm happy to still be a donor to your organization, but I'm not sure you need me in a seat on the board. And it was as a new executive and a new, newly
into a new
working to
space.
boards,
Yeah.
right? And being in a new space, for someone to have that awareness and almost create their own off-ramp in such a graceful way. But it was really eye-opening to me that it's really important that we're clear about what the needs of our board are, right? In terms of those who serve and what they contribute.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that was
and
just a good lesson.
if our maxim is board seats are priceless, so don't pick for pulse, pick for passion, capacity, etc. This leads me to a if we flip it. So you've told me here's a secret sauce. There's a variety of things that you think about as a potential, and also as you introduce people to the Y and potential leadership on the board. What do potential candidates, what's like a couple questions they really need to ask to know if it is a good fit, if they're gonna, if they are gonna be a good fit as well?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, the first one I get asked always is, what's the time commitment? And my early learnings, thankfully, and what I stay steadfast to now is, do not underplay what you need from people in terms of time. Your mission is worth it, and we owe it to people to be clear about what we need from them in terms of time. Early on, I found myself saying, well, it's only once a month meetings.
It's not that much.
No.
Don't worry.
And there were moments where I regretted that, or that didn't work.
Yeah,
So that is a question I often get asked that I appreciate, and I want the chance to answer honestly.
I think board member, anybody who wants to serve on a board or is currently serving on a board, hear me when I say rest up, right? Get ready, and don't the value you bring to the board is at least equal or less than the value you're going to get back based on how much you pour into it. Right?
You get out what you put in.
Exactly,
for sure.
exactly. And so being clear, like, yeah, it's a privilege. Yeah, the seats are priceless. So here is how much time. If it's not a good season for you and it doesn't work, don't worry about it. We might circle back, but you need to understand it's more than just showing up for 2 or 3 hours every other month or once a month or whatever. And I think that's really important for everybody then to make a conscious choice. So I love that you do that. Jody, in the time that you have served at the Y, and we probably should give a little bit of background on that, right?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do it. So you were hired to create a program.
I was actually hired 25 years ago this year.
Oh,
in
congratulations!
August, as an intern in our marketing department.
Oh my gosh.
Paid internship, thankfully.
Oh my, wow.
But it was ideally to be on a track for membership service to the Y and operations. So I've been in operations ever since.
I love it.
Yeah.
And so you started as an intern and now you're running what is, at least in Middle Tennessee, probably not only the premier, but the most sought after, you'll never see the parking lot empty, facility that opened, oh my gosh, are we on the second year, third
May
year?
of 23, so we're just literally right at 2 years.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And an answering call of all the needs as well as the wants of the community. My suspicion is you may have a collection of stories. Would you share with us one that really was a challenge, either with a particular board, because we know boards are, they are seated 2 to 3 years, there can be some change, or 4 years, right, depending on the term. So there are board cultures and board identities, right? So I'm hoping it's not one that I served on, but could there be a challenge of a board, or perhaps even a board member
Yeah.
And it could be general membership or board leadership that you could share. So if you could kind of explain what the challenge was, and then how you remediated it, so that we can kind of learn what you go through with a high-powered volunteer group of people who are uber achievers.
Yeah.
Because that's easy to manage.
When you posed this question, I did have one situation that happened a little earlier in my career, before I knew you.
Okay.
Does that make you feel better?
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I had an incredibly hardworking, passionate board chair show up in my space. He had been referred by another board member. He served as a board member for a period of time, of course, before he became chair. But he was in a pretty high-powered corporate position and had recently retired.
Perfect.
Yes. So he had time.
Yeah.
He had talent. He had treasure. All the things that you look for, that perfect balance of board member. But when he became board chair, he was directing and leading his peer board members in the same way that he direct and led his direct reports and staff in his corporate culture. And he had a very directive style.
So habits are hard to break, is what we're saying.
Habits are hard to break. And it was challenging for the board members who, in some cases, were their perspective was, I'm volunteering here.
Well, and their C-suite may have been on the same corner office, right? Yeah, okay. I understand.
Sure.
Okay, perfect.
So it created some tension with some of the other board members who were gracious enough to be vocal about it with me, which, put me in a position to have to really be brave. For me, it was being brave in the moment. And it was to have an honest conversation with a person that I really cared about, that I saw so many strengths and value in what he was doing, but trying to help him navigate how to communicate with his peers in a different way and help him make that transition. So.
Well, that's terrific. I think that also shows that there are those boundaries, guardrails, et cetera, right, of board to staff, and that it really is the executive director's job to manage the board. It's kind of like not the number one thing, but it's maybe 1.5, right? And so understanding how to be able to do that with people whose level might be different, life experience might be different, work experience might be different, can be very difficult for, no matter the age, right? Can be very difficult for the executive director, because instead of there being some kind of collaborative communication between those two very important spots, it can still feel hierarchical. So it's really important to kind of level that with people keeping respect for the boundaries, right? So this is interesting because they have their own identity. I do believe that's true, but they also have their own culture of how they work and feed that identity. So how do you know that your board's enjoying themselves? How do you know? I mean, engagement is one thing, right? But how do you know they're enjoying themselves? Because part of it is, yeah, it's hard work. It's going to take time, probably take a little bit of dough. You're going to manage some of your networks, but you also want to have fun because, like you just said, this is volunteer, and it's volunteer at a different level, right? So, how do you know? How do you know that they're having a good time?
So one of the things that we implemented here at the Brentwood board, to give a little history, we had 2 Ys in this city, and we sold one and took the proceeds from that and invested in the one we're in now. So we merged 2 boards together. And there were great practices as both, but not identical. So we were able to really look and assess, and we had board members from the Y that closed come over. And one of the things that came out of that was the Brentwood Y had an active board development committee that met outside of the board meetings. And so of our 15 board members, 5 are on this board development committee. And it's been such a rich environment where, first of all, it's really safe. It's all trusted, and we can say what needs to be said about how the board's functioning. But also, I go into every meeting just with a series of questions because their input matters so much. So asking what their thoughts and opinions are, letting them inform how we're going to go about recruiting to our board, how we're going to go about keeping our board engaged, how we're going to go about orienting our new board members when they come on, so that we have, it's not just the board chair and the CEO or the exec defining all that, it's a group of people who have been down the journey and learned either the good or the bad, right? They can say, well, my experience was this and I would have liked to have seen this. So that group has been invaluable to me. So I think my answer to your question would be ask as many questions as you can and seek their counsel and input. Because if you've done the right work in the recruitment process, you have people around the table who have infinite wisdom to give and come from all kinds of different backgrounds, be it personally or professionally. And they'll give you ideas you didn't think of and that would never happen.
I like that.
If you didn't.
I like that, because I
there.
think sometimes we think that, particularly in a leadership position, you need to have all the answers. So people, first of all, don't know you don't know. Maybe have never done it before, but it's also because it's an organic organization of people and relationships, and people might be going through different things at different times. And if they feel they can come in and say, this is working, this isn't working. So is the board development committee, does it include past board members?
Currently, it's only current board members.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'm asked, what do I do with these people who are really ginned up? They really like whatever organization they're with, and they know a lot of stuff, so they would be helpful. And all of a sudden, they turn off, and then it's like, wow, what do I do now? Friendships, they're not lost. They just don't see the people. They're not engaged in these kind of conversations anymore. Their access is never denied, but it's going to be different for them. Have you guys thought about what to do with those folks?
Yeah, we do not have an active answer to that at the moment. I'll be transparent.
Yeah.
But I know our association board is looking at an alumni board service. One of you asked, how do we know they're having fun? So one of the ideas that came out of our board development committee was to create an engagement calendar where we list all of the events and activities and places that you can come observe and support, volunteer, cheer on. Sometimes it's just a happy hour. And so we created a calendar for this year of all the different things that they can do with our organization. And sometimes it's family events that we host to our membership. Sometimes it's an outreach event. And like I said, sometimes it's coffee. But the activity in that and the energy when they're in those spaces, we even bought them all shirts that match. So when they come to the events, you know it's the board.
Oh, I love that.
And it talks about how the why is for everyone, and we have the ability to serve all people. So, ultimately, my experience has been they come and tell you and they thank you for making it engaging.
Absolutely, because you valued the one important resource we have talked about, which is time. I think the shirt stuff is genius. I'll tell you why. Because they can not only talk about the why, but people who are at that event, whatever it is, right? Coffee, ABC, whatever it is, you have shown the general public what leadership is, looks like, can be, and so they can serve in that ambassadorial role too. Well, how did you become, right? And I know with the why, it's not who you know or how you know, or smoke-filled back rooms. It really is a matter of how do I represent the people that we're serving in the why, but also in the larger community. Oh, I love, that's a great idea. I think that's something that boards really, as more and more people seek to be in these priceless seats, it's just something to think about in terms of, well, what do we do with those folks that have been true, trustworthy, given their time, talent, and their treasure? How do we keep them engaged? Not members of the board, right? Non-voting, but could they serve on a committee? Or can we have an event that has, termed off, retired, emeriti, whatever you want to say, and then with current boards, and then maybe you come and say, so here's where we're going. And they feel a little bit of access, and their leadership is recognized as well as the time. So that board development committee, I love. That's a really important point. So there's a fullness to the engagement.
Well, and that's been essential for us in recruitment too. So we had another retired CFO who did understand that his role wasn't necessarily managing our budget, right? But he was a systems and process person.
Okay.
And he loved numbers.
Okay.
And so when it came time for recruitment 2 years ago, he said, "Can I do some data analysis?" And I said, "Please, Bill, please do some data analysis." And so he went and looked at the demographic makeup of our membership base, the makeup of our Brentwood community, the makeup of, a 15-mile radius. We compared that to our existing board. We looked at industry, not just obviously demographics around male, female, age, so on. We looked at, what space are they working in? Who's rolling off? What gifts did they bring? Because he was rolling off. He funnily said, "I have another bald white guy if you want him."
Yeah. But perfect.
That data helped us identify and be really thoughtful and strategic about who are we bringing on in this cycle. And that group also helped us figure out what's the right number of people for our board, because there can be too many in my experience. And so all of that was done really thoughtfully, so that when we recruited to that next class of people that come in, we also are very regimented about bringing people in
absolutely.
Only once a year.
Absolutely.
In a class.
100%.
So that we can onboard them
onboard
well,
100%.
mentor them well, connect them well. That's another thing I would faithfully lean on. But that group helps manage all of that for us. So
I love that. I'm sorry, I just cut you
No,
off.
yeah.
You also celebrate the people who are terming off, and that's important as well. So the more data we all have, the better. As some folks are going to yawn at that when they think about it. It also is a matter of if a volunteer, not just their time, right, but if their kind of content, industry knowledge, and that's not just business people, right? It can be stay-at-homes, it can be academics, it can be retired folks, it can be folks who are younger and learning what boards are about. Having that breadth of experience is really important. But we have to remember, what you're not espousing is, well, if I get an HR person, then that person can help operationally. Boards are oversight, right? Whether fiduciary or advisory, they're oversight. And I think that's important to remember as well. Clearly, high-performing boards under Jody's leadership, not a surprise. And I love some of the things that we've talked about today. Has there been an opportunity for you to sit on the other side of the table? In terms of being a part of a board, or navigating that side of the table, I guess.
Yeah. Well, very recently, I was recruited to a board that I would define as more of an advisory board, less of a fiduciary opportunity. And a friend invited me in, because I did have a connection to the work of the group. And they said, "Well, would you want to come observe a board meeting?" And I said, "Well, sure, be happy to come observe a board meeting." And then in the middle of the meeting, they said, "Are you in? You ready to serve?"
Sign right here.
Yeah. And I thought, oh, I could be helpful maybe to this group. But I really am passionate about that work, and I care deeply about it. And so, we're working on what that looks like.
That's awesome.
But it was a reminder to me that not everybody has the practices in place to, thoughtfully or strategically onboard folks to the room.
Yeah, I think people in this space, in the nonprofit social impact space, know they have to have a board. They know what it maybe could look like, right? They know maybe a couple things about the number and the intent, because hopefully the bylaws, when they did their 501c3, caused them to think about that. But I'm not sure we necessarily understand that a board is this body of people, well-meaning, capable, highly capable, who are urged or have engaged in a volunteer slot that's going to demand a lot from them. And the more we set them up for success at the beginning, and also allow them to have the space to say, I'm not sure that's working quite right. People want to engage that way.
Yeah.
I think the days of just showing up, spending an hour, seeing you the next month, writing your check, right? Hopefully that stuff's gone. The tricky part for you folks is going to be, as we've talked about, where's the guardrail? Whether advisory or fiduciary. And fiduciary has much more about making sure that the organization is sustainable and is fit financially, as well as delivering the programs or services or products that they have promised in their mission. But it's important for people to really be ready to serve. And we talked kind of jovially about the rest up, prepare, all that stuff, and that's really, really true. Jody, let's talk about advice you would give. And sometimes we think advice has to be given to new board members. So I'll take a shot. Why don't you, I have served on a lot of boards, right? Local to international, it's one of the best things I've ever done in my life. What advice would you give me if I were back sitting in your priceless seats on your board? What are some things you want me to know so that I can bring all that I am to that opportunity?
Yeah. I mean, if we're using you as an example, there's some things we're doing differently now than when you served before. And so keeping you informed on how it's operating now, right? But mostly I'd want to know what's calling you back. And I think I know your giftings, but maybe those have changed too. So what have you learned in these other board experiences that you've had that you think you can contribute to ours? And how can we plug you in to those?
Yeah, I like that.
I have a current board member who's been with me for several years now and transitioned from our other Y over, and she had gone deep with us in philanthropy. She had been a really great friend, and it has been and continues to be. So she was on our philanthropy committee. And but she came to me and said, would it be okay if after we finish the campaign this year, I step back? I'm really feeling called to the Community Engagement Committee and what they're doing now, and is that a possibility? And I was so grateful because her engagement is either gonna stay the same or get better because we're plugging her in where she feels called, right? And so that would be advice I would give, is if you've served for a while, particularly on the same board, be brave and vocalize where you think you can contribute and if a change is needed, because most of the time I think we can try to make that happen,
So through this whole conversation, what I have truly liked is, and it's not a surprise, but just so everybody else sees it and I call it out, it's really this determination and intention to be vulnerable and humble and open to understand that practices have to breathe as well, right? So 101 in the 80s for board management is going to be different now. What I also like in that conversation with the current board member is, I really love what I'm doing. I know that I'm good at it. That's why I'm on this committee. I think I might like to try something different, which is also one of the cool aspects of being on a board. So you might be the finance person, and that's what you do every day, all day, and so of course you're plugged onto that, right? So P&Ls, yeah, I got that. Looking at budgets, I got that, et cetera, right? But you may have, in a world or life long ago, you may have been this creative genius in marketing, but you're never going to get picked for that because you're the finance guy, right? Or the finance woman or the finance person. I like that your board understands these conversations of, well, I'd kind of like to get some development in that particular committee, or see where that might take me, because my interests, they haven't changed, but I'd like to expand it. I want boards to know, board members to know, that once they sit in that seat and they may be given some, real targeted responsibilities, it really is up to them to advocate, and that movement can happen. So I love that you guys practice that, and you are 100% about the engagement, right? Like through the roof.
I also think that we as operators, execs, CEOs our board members deserve an opportunity for us to start that conversation too for them. So one practice that we have in place is in December every year, we meet one-on-one with every board member. And you helped craft these questions, Deb, and they still exist, by the way, where we say, what's one thing you learned this year that you didn't know before? What's one thing you're proud of that you did to serve? What committee did you serve on? Did you enjoy it? Do you want to change? And so every year, those folks have an opportunity to reassess and say, well, where do my gifts lie now? Or maybe we recruited some new folks on that they could pass the torch to in a certain space. So it's all those systematic practices that are very intentional and thoughtful, but to your point, having the fluidity and willingness to pivot and move where you need to so that you can keep people engaged and connected.
So that's where we move from leadership or move from management, right? Because we kind of started like board management. What does that look like? It's part of your like job description. But it really is about leadership, and leadership has to be open and flexible and take the good with the bad and understand that it's about being responsive, not reactive. It's not about control, it's about collaboration. And it sounds like I mean, it's really important for us to understand that when people serve on the Y, many of them are not first-time board people. They come with some experience, and that's a different kind of cohort than folks who are new or it's a smaller organization. When we talk about advice, and thank you for the advice you gave me, I really did appreciate you thinking about, could you bring new things to us and say it out loud versus the board member sitting there and going, like you may have in that experience you told us about, this could be done a little bit differently, so it's really nice that you're just kind of like, so just we're open to that. If you think there can be efficiencies, let's go for it. It's not about us, it's about serving the mission. So if somebody out there is interested about serving on a board, and sometimes we know that it's usually forward-facing people in corporations, salespeople, C-suite people, right? The people that kind of have the personality, but we also know that content knowledge of HR, facilities, IT, operations, et cetera, which may not have the glamour, but there's so much information that can be helpful on a board. Or we may have people who have just graduated college, or people who have retired, or people who have a side hustle, or people who are at home with little ones. What advice would you give them as they start to think about serving on a board?
I mean, first and foremost, I think, well, it's not that different than work, right? We find things that we are passionate about, then we are more engaged in it. And so that would be my first thing, was audit, what are you exposed to and what do you feel passionate about and called to? And that feels obvious. But
I think it's important, right? Because what we're talking about is entrances into something people think they aren't, they don't have the capacity or the connections to do it. And what I'm hearing is, find out what kind of moves you.
Yeah, and I think don't assume that because you don't have a personal connect to it that there's not a place to you. Either a personal connect through an existing board member or through the executive. I'll use an example. We have a member, his name's Pat, and he just reached out to me and said, I really love this organization. I've been a member for a long time, and I saw your board pictures on the wall. What does it look like to be a board member? And that could go multiple ways. I mean, sometimes people think they can influence operational decisions and they ask for that reason. That was not the case with him, but because we had a practice in place where we said, we don't have a board seat open at this moment. We're not recruiting until next spring, but tell me about what your strengths are. Tell me about what you love. Turns out he had a background in grant writing and philanthropy. And
we'll make a board seat.
What we did was we said, well, we have this philanthropy committee. Would you like to come sit on this and learn a little more about how we do philanthropy in the Y? And we'll engage you where you are able. And then come spring, we'll see if you feel called to a board seat and if it's the right fit for us. So we had a good 9 months with him before board recruitment actually formally started. So anyway, I just think, get out there, let people know that you're interested, and then there's a process that should be mutually beneficial where you figure out if it fits for you and the organization will figure out if you're a fit for them.
So what I like about the maturity level of where your boards are and how you recruit and everything, there's a couple kind of underlying themes. First of all, don't panic, right? Don't panic, because a panic kind of invitation to serve could result in 4 years of sheer pain, right? In everybody's heart. It also gives value to the experience. It also lets people know, and I think this is what I love about the gentleman, or it may not have been a gentleman, I don't know why I went there, Pat, serving on the philanthropy, is to get a sense about, it's that instead of please, please, please pick me, or we've got this seat, we've got to get it going for a variety of reasons. You were saying, let's just see. Let's see if it works for us. And it may or it may not. As well as, there aren't any seats right now. Don't be deterred. Okay, so tell me a story, a memory that kind of sits in your heart that's either funny or, we'll stay away from sadness, but just kind of funny or causes you to go, I really like working with boards.
Well, you may regret asking me this
Terrific.
question because this one gave me all the feels.
Okay.
So I don't know if your viewers know your many myriad of talents, but one of my favorite moments in my service to the Y was for the viewers' benefit, we did a Heroes and Heels event. It was for our After Breast Cancer program, so we made our survivors runway models and did a fashion show, as you know well. And as you also know, you were gracious enough to come up and make the ask at the end of the event so people would invest so that we can carry on that free program for survivors, right? The time when we were doing mic checks, and your mic check was 4 times longer than anyone else's, and I just didn't understand it. And then in the show, you came out and sang your brilliantly beautiful jazz music, because the message that year was we are more than our diagnosis, right? As you are.
Oh, that is so kind of you to remember that.
And I love surprises, not always in the events I'm planning. But in this case, I loved that surprise. It spoke to the audience. It told your story. It gave us the outcome that we needed, right? And it just was an amazing moment.
Well, that's really kind of you to say that.
Yeah, that made people smile and brought them to tears and made them feel compelled to help support us and all the things. So everybody's got talents they can bring, and you never know which ones you'll need at what time.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
So there you go.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you for your time today. It's so good to see you, first of all.
You too.
Congratulations on all the success for this new amazing facility. But Jody, thank you for sharing stories and wisdom and advice. Having the opportunity to serve on a board is a once-in-a-lifetime way to meet people you never would have met, help a mission, serve more, and learn more about yourself. So thank you for helping us kind of put all that together.
Well, thank you for giving me the chance to share. I was really honored when you asked.
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see you soon.
Okay.
All righty.
Wonderful to see you. Take care.
Bye. So that's Jody Schroer, a consummate professional who shows us that leading leaders can be a lot of fun and can be complicated and complex at the same time. She showed me today, and I am glad we shared with you what I've always known, is that Jody understands that in the community she builds at the Y, those folks who are very willing to give their time, their talent, their resources to this international objective of bringing people together is an important piece for those people to experience, as well as for the delivery of the mission to benefit from. So she talked about humility, vulnerability, being responsive, being reactive. She talked about how recruitment is critical, but not just to put butts in the seat, but to put capacity and commitment and compassion in those seats. That's going to be used. You and I know that in all the volunteering anyone has ever done, whether it was when you were 7 and part of a car wash, maybe not at 7, but when you were part of a car wash in a church, or helping somebody who may need some assistance, the one thing you wanted to do is know what you were expected to do so you could feel success and you could feel as though you had contributed to the day, the moment, the event. Jody laid out a perfect way to help people understand if the fit on a particular board is right through serving in the organization first, and then maybe having a conversation about that, making sure that expectations from everything from how much time is going to be allotted to your service and required of your service, to different ways that you can bring value and ways that you might get value by serving on a committee you never thought you might be able to because you've been maybe pegged into a certain role. that leadership within a board is responsive to creating a culture and an identity for the board in which they currently serve, and that anybody's welcome. If you have the interest, if it fits, if it's something you have time for, if it's something you're committed to, board work, as Jody has said, is open to anyone who will take the plunge and do the work that's necessary to help all of us involved in organizations in the nonprofit social impact sector to serve more. We hope this has been helpful. We'll have more conversations with people like Jody, and thank you for joining us.